Hi, Pete Malinverni here, Chair of Jazz Studies at Purchase College, and along with Performing Arts Center Director Seth Soloway, I'm co-curator of the Jazz at the Center series, which we hope to recommence before too long, but of course everything's on pause right now. So in the meantime, I'm just reaching out to you saying hello with this little series called What's Going On Up There, as I explore using the various elements of music, what exactly we try to do when we're playing jazz music, and what are the various tools that we use to both express and evoke human emotion. Today, texture. And texture is a sort of an amorphous element, if you will. It's not that easy to define. I almost need to use other examples. For example, if you think of the difference between thick oil painting, I'm talking about an artwork, right? Thick, laid on thick oils versus, say, a print, right? There's a big difference in the effect that that has on us because the medium is got that thickness or that flatness. Even insofar as if you look at a photograph that's matte or glossy, that's texture. You can look at a piece of fabric, and just looking at it, you can kind of tell how it feels, right? If it's a nubby kind of fabric, if it's an Angora wool, or if it's a real smooth silk, if it's a nice linen cotton. Or if it's, let's say, it's a man-made sort of man-made fabric, right? They all have different textures, and you can almost feel what that's like on your body just looking at it, the texture. You might think of food, the difference, say, between mashed potatoes and farro, right? There's a big difference there, I guess, in flavor, but really in texture, and I think that's where the tale is told. So texture in music, what is that? Well, it can be a nubby, right? Or it can be a smooth kind of thing. Nubby might be if I'm using a staccato or detached touch. Or I can use a legato touch. I'm using almost, relatively the same kind of language, but the texture's different, so there's a different feeling, right? And so I have to deploy those as suggested by how I'm feeling, but also how I hope my audience will feel. Because, of course, the best music happens in collaboration between the musician and his or her listener. I can use, let's say, high notes. Or low notes. Right? I can use a single line. Or I can use maybe a couple of lines. That starts to add something to it. A piano player might take a solo. I'll pretend I'm the bass player here. A piano player might take a solo. Why? Maybe to cut, to try to have a, maybe cut through the cymbal, maybe to have just a lighter sound. Or the pianist may want to play a chordal solo. I'll still pretend I'm the bass player as well. Different kinds of textures just available here at the piano. I can play detached, or I can do the same thing with the damper pedal, which will hold all the notes. Right? Texture. Again, these are all things I have to be aware of so that I can employ them when I feel they're appropriate. Now, in a jazz performance, you'll hear somebody playing drum set. You'll hear the drummer sometimes play sticks, sometimes brushes, which gives that beautiful kind of shimmery kind of thing. It creates an airy sort of environment. The sticks are a little more forceful, maybe. The drummer may play any number of the drums, may play the cymbals. The hi-hat is closing, right? That's operated by a foot pedal. The bass drum, the lowest drum, is operated by another foot pedal. A little quick shout out to drummers. The independence of their four limbs is really quite something. When you see a drummer who has it all together in that regard, it's really quite fun to just watch. Oftentimes, when I go, say, to a nightclub to hear jazz music, I'll try to sit near the drummer and even kind of sit a little bit behind so I can watch the drummer operate that incredible instrument, which is, of course, a polyglot of many instruments, right? It's a snare drum, it's a tom-tom or two, it's a bass drum, it's a ride cymbal, a crash cymbal, and the two hi-hats, and whatever other stuff the drummer may have. The drummer may choose to strike any of those things with mallets. You hear that sometimes. Again, with brushes or with sticks. And different thicknesses of sticks. Can play loud, can play soft. Those things are all really a part of what we consider when we're playing jazz music together. How about the bass? The bass can play pizzicato, striking those quarter notes. Or arco, right? Now you don't hear so much the arco played during a jazz performance. Mostly you hear the pizzicato, the quarter note that the bass player is playing. But there have been and remain some magnificent arco bassists. There's one called Paul Chambers that you might want to check out. His arco soloing is really monumental. It's beautiful, it's melodic, he gets all over the instrument. But always in the service of the music. It never sounds like he's doing it just to, show off. The horns, of course, the saxophones. Just think about that. We have the soprano, the alto, the tenor, the baritone saxophone. Those are the four most oft used ones. They each have a different range, high notes to mid-range notes to low notes, and they use them all with facility. The brass instruments, we think of the trombone. Of course, that's got that beautiful wide range. Trombone can play the highest and the lowest of notes. We don't often realize what a beautiful and agile instrument it is. But the trombonist can stick a mute in and get a different sound, or use a plunger mute to get that wah kind of sound. Same with trumpet, can use that, or other mutes. You might want to listen to the great Miles Davis and his usage most often on ballads, but other times on swinging things too, where he uses what's called a Harmon mute, and it's that sweet little sound. He made it famous. You're probably hearing it in your ear right now. If not, check it out. You might hear, there's a record called Relaxin, the Miles Davis Quintet, and he plays the Harmon mute like nobody's business. But that became sort of one of his signature sounds. The guitar, of course. You think about all the different textures available there. Single line notes, chordal solos. Wes Montgomery played his octave solos. All different kinds of textures available. And so what? Well, we have to understand and be able to use those textures and then be able to play something we hope will evoke or express human emotion. I'm going to play you a little something. This is a tune called Gone with the Wind. And I'll try to move around between different textures. A little funny, you know, to try to force all these different textures just to make a point, but you get the idea. So I really want to encourage you, you know, what's the difference when you listen to music, any kind of music? How is a string quartet different from an orchestra? You know, how is a solo piano sonata different from a piano concerto? How is a string section different from the brass? And how have the great composers and the great players in jazz music, how have they used those various differences to express? To me, the best example as a jazz musician is listen to the music of Duke Ellington. The colors, the textures he was able to achieve in his big band writing really, to me, is unparalleled. Other great writers might be somebody like Thad Jones, who had a great big band for many years. His writing texturally was incredible. Newer composers, you might listen to the wonderful Maria Schneider. Her work is really quite beautiful, and it's happening now. Anyway, so that's a quick look at texture. I hope it was in some way enlightening. The next thing we'll talk about in our fifth and final installment of what's going on up there is form. But, and I'm going to say goodbye, but before I do, I want to thank you all. I've been hearing from a lot of you really nice comments and some great questions too. Feel free to send me an email, you know, get to know me, get to say hello. I love hearing from people. And we at the Performing Arts Center and Purchase College at large wish you all the very best. So take good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.